Okay, well, welcome everyone to Ladies Night. This is episode 17. It's hard to believe we've already gotten 17 of these in. I'm your host, Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, and I am with Southside Sox, writer, editor, and podcaster. And with me is my co-host, Delia Ritchie. She's also with our Sox Populi podcast group. And we have a very special guest for you today. At Ladies Night, we like to talk baseball, and we usually, get to that at some point, make it baseball interesting. But we also like to highlight all the amazing women that we have in our fandom and our sports lives. And today we have our special guest, Kirsten Ramos. Kirsten is the CEO of her own company, Elevate Performance Solutions, which provides training to help organizations build strong teams, develop leaders, and embrace overall personal and organizational performance, which sounds amazing. And I'm super excited to learn more about that. She's also a mom to daughter Olivia and wife to husband Pat, who our Sox fans may know by a different name, but we'll get to that later. And a dog mom to Morty. So welcome, Kirsten, to Ladies Night. We're so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here, especially talking to the two of you. So thanks so much. I'm honored to spend some time with you all.
All right. Well, we're going to kind of break our podcast today down into three parts. And to kick off our first part, I'd like to talk about your professional background, because you are a kick-ass business owner of your own company. So kind of tell us about your educational background, how you got there.
Yeah, I feel like in my field, which is the learning and development space, I feel like no one goes to school to become like a corporate trainer or someone like an executive coach. They usually go to school for something and then realize, "Ooh, I don't really like this," and then they become a corporate trainer. And that's pretty much how I fell into it. I went to the University of Iowa, go Hawkeyes, woohoo! And I graduated with an English and Communications Studies degree, which means you can do whatever you want, because it's so general. And I went into public relations, found out that was not for me. Kind of hopped around different industries for a while, and then realized, you know what? I think I want to get into learning and development. And I started at the very ground floor about 19 years ago, and then just worked my way up. And by the time I was leading learning and development for a global advertising technology company, I decided, okay, let me go out on my own and try to do this consulting thing. And that was in 2016. So I'm coming up on my 9-year anniversary. So pretty excited. I love working for myself.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. Like, how were you were you scared? Were you like, oh, I totally got this? Like, how were your emotions when you were thinking about going into business for yourself?
Yeah, well, and that's a great question, Melissa, because a lot of things kind of fell into place to make this decision. The company I mentioned that I was working for, loved it, great culture. They were purchased by a large company. And even though the large company wanted to retain me, and they did retain me for a while, the values of the organization no longer aligned with mine. Went from, cool, young, fun to like, ooh, you got to jump through all these different hoops in order to get a conversation with someone. And that wasn't really how I operated. So, at the same time, my daughter needed a little bit more support from me. Mm-hmm. And so, thank goodness for a supportive husband that said, why don't you just quit? Why don't you just walk away? Why don't you just take time for yourself, figure out your next move? And I was like, yeah, of course, everybody takes a summer off, right? Like, it's not a teacher or a student. And then, in the summer, I started getting a little itchy to get back to work. And I just thought, let me just try this consulting thing. Let me try my own thing. And I have not looked back. I absolutely love what I do.
That's so awesome. Because you saw that what you're doing wasn't working, that you needed something else, that there was things in your family, and we're able to like take a look at that and and say, okay, it's time to do something different. Because I feel like as women, we take care of other people all the time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so you were able to be like, okay, I got to do some self-care here in order to keep taking care, helping my daughter and
Yes.
doing other things, which is, like I said, as a woman, is often not what we prioritize.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So being a woman in kind of like a man's world, I mean, you're doing consulting, I would imagine, with a lot of big businesses, still known as kind of like a man's world out there.
Yeah.
How is that for you? And has it changed over time? Like, when you first started 9 years ago to now, have you seen some differences?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm in a lucky space for the fact that a lot of my colleagues that do what I do, a lot of my client contacts are women. So, and nothing, no shade against the guys out there, but it's great to be able to work with other women and see other women be amplified within an organization. But in that same, in the same vein, there, it's a lot of the websites on the leadership, the section of the website of the companies I work with, a lot of mature white men. So I think it's interesting because my role is I'm a vendor for them, but it doesn't mean that I have to say like, okay, I need to completely conform. A choice I made a few years ago was to make sure that my graphics in my PowerPoint presentations and in the printed materials as kind of leave behinds for my participants, I chose to really amplify women and people of color. And so it's very interesting when it's more of, if I look at an old deck, I'm like, ooh, I got to update these visuals because it maybe wasn't a focus at the time. Because I feel like, if I can do just that little thing in a corporation that maybe still is trying to bring more awareness and diversity to their staff, then it's more of that I'm representing what they want to see or what they should be seeing.
That's awesome. That's just so great that, you've seen changes and you've been able to like adapt to those changes as it's all, come forth. So how about, your daughter? You're raising a young woman. What do you hope that she kind of, takes from seeing her mom be this amazing, person that, can have her own business and do her own thing? What do you hope she kind of takes from your experience?
I mean, I feel like right now she'd be like, Mom, please just don't ever work. Just spend time with me. Let's go do stuff.
That's not the truth. Moms and daughters. I know you're close to your mom too. I'm super close to my daughter. Yes, it is a very.
I'm like that with my Mom. We could just like hang out together if you want. Like,
yes,
just the rest of our lives. And she's like, darn it, that does sound. I'm like, she was with a bunch of her girlfriends and they were talking about doing like a Golden Girls kind of compound vibe. And I'm like, we just do that with almost all the women in the White Sox.
Yes.
Like, circles connect. So
that's right. We just create pods, right? Little pods that we all have. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I love that we are, my daughter and I are very close and we get to do a lot of things because, part 1B of the answer of this question is also that I don't work. What I do, it's not a 40-hour a week. It's not a 60-hour a week. I'm more like 25 hours a week. And in the summer, it's even less because I do want to make sure I have that, quality time. And I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to work this job, not super full time. But, I really hope that in the future, she looks back on my job and on my work and says like, wow, you really did something that inspired you, that you were passionate about. And I hope that translates to her finding something that she's passionate about. Because I think all too often, people go into careers that it's kind of like, well, I want to make sure I make money. So even though I don't really like this is something that I'll be able to make a living at. And I hope that she can find both, where it's more that I'm really passionate about it. It is a decent living, and that she'll say, because man, my mom was really passionate about what she did, and she loved working, and I do. So hope that she sees that.
And able to find that work-life balance with it all.
Yes.
I think that's so important, especially with the pace of today's world. Like it's so fast all the time, and they've grown up like that. And so, being able to see, okay, you don't have to have the 60-hour work week and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
There are ways to, make that work-life balance thing work.
Yes. Well, and I mean, I've mentioned it before, but having a supportive partner is amazing too. I realize that I'm in a place of privilege that I can work the limited hours that I do, but I do credit a lot of the ability to do that to my incredibly supportive husband.
Yeah, it makes a difference to have supportive people in your corner. So
sure.
That's a really good thing, I think, to model for, young people as well, that you have to find those good people who lift you up. And then in turn, you can lift them up, and it's a great partnership. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to transition now to the part that I'm really, really excited to talk about. So it's your Moms Demand Action community advocacy. So just tell me more about it, because I really don't know much about it at all, and I would love to learn more.
Yeah, Moms Demand Action is an organization. It's under the Everytown umbrella, and it's really about gun sense and electing gun sense candidates within our communities, just to bring awareness to the gun violence that surrounds, sadly, every community. And it's really hard to find someone who hasn't been affected by gun violence in some way, whether or not it's someone brought a gun to school, or someone had someone in their life take their own life by use of a gun. So I think it's a cause that I really embraced. And it's funny because people will ask me a lot, like, okay, like, how did you get involved in this? Like, was it just like the lockdown drills at school just made you crazy that your child was having to go through this? And it's like, I could say like, oh yeah, I hate that. I had tornado drills living in Iowa, but no, she has lockdown drills. And so, but no, I feel like every person I talk to that is a part of Moms Demand Action, there was a breaking point. So, when Sandy Hook happened, my daughter was 2, and it was horrific and awful, but I couldn't relate. My child wasn't in school. It was like, oh, that's so awful, and let me give money, which is, all fine and well. But when Uvalde happened, I was like, and we're done. We are done. My daughter's a 6th grader. These were 4th graders. This is hitting way too close to home. And it's interesting when you meet other individuals, because Moms Demand Action, by the way, is not just moms. It's men, women, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas. It's everybody. But when you meet people, everybody has a story. And a lot of my counterparts and fellow members are gun violence survivors themselves, whether or not they were involved in an active shooting or they have lost loved ones. But every single person I've talked to has a story or a breaking point, if you will.
Wow, which certainly makes it even more personable, once you start getting involved in an organization, and then you meet people who this, it's directly impacted, and it becomes more meaningful, because it's, yes, you can be engaged by something you see like on TV, Columbine for those things that you were like, oh my gosh. But then when you, get involved in and you meet people who's like, oh yeah, my roommate's, brother or whatever.
Yes.
It becomes so much more real than just, reading it in the paper or on a website or what have you.
Yep, for sure.
I think to go on with my breaking point was, I wasn't even in high school anymore. I was in college, was Parkland. Parkland was like,
Yep.
I'm seeing all these kids younger than I am. And I had like, in grade school, we started having lockdown drills, but it was because there was like a threat in the community that we had to like have indoor recess. And growing up in Chicago, it was like the first day of like warmth. And we're like, oh, cool. There was an active bank robber who was armed. Great. Wonderful. He came in our area. But
Right.
we were mad because we thought, oh, we don't get outdoor recess, but it was just a safety thing. But
Right.
in high school, I vividly remember starting to have those drills, even though we were an all-girls Catholic high school in the suburbs of Chicago, like in the North Shore suburbs of all things. And I didn't think about that until Highland Park happened. And that was like my second, because I held a baby on the 4th of July. And the next day they're at that parade. And I'm at a country, like I'm with my family and friends, and this baby just like rests their head on their shoulder. And they were actively running, but they were okay.
Yeah.
Not
thank goodness. Yeah.
harmed in like the mental load of that, but okay in the but like even like domestic violence is a huge component of that. Like I'm grateful that my mom has an active role in that, and she will use the law when it's necessary, but it's just still, it's terrifying. It's you know someone, even if you don't think you do, like someone is.
Oh yeah. It's a stone throw away. Like, yeah.
It's so true.
And it's so, like, as a young individual, like you're seeing this day in, day out. Like I was 2 when Columbine happened, so I have no recollection of it, but I grew up hearing about it. And
way to make us feel old.
No, I have those moments I go, oh shoot, don't say those things. Don't say it.
That's what I love about these types of,
right?
Yeah, it just to have the different perspectives and
for sure.
Absolutely. Generation after generation of how it keeps impacting.
I broke down after Uvalde. I just started bawling my eye. I couldn't hear the song Pictures of You, and I kept seeing those kids. And then I thought about the Toronto Blue Jays of all teams, because the one little boy, that was his little league team, and like he loved the Blue Jays. He loved Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I'm like, you can't tell. I'm like, you have to tell me about the personal things. Like I have to connect to something, because if I don't, I lose my heart. If I lose my heart, I lose a part of like who I am, and that cannot happen. So,
well, I love that you said that, because I think a lot of times, and it's human nature, it's probably our defense mechanism of like, we don't want to absorb all of these things because it's what we're trying to keep ourselves safe. But it's also like, sometimes we really need to stare at it and say, okay, this is really awful. What is my piece? What can I do in this situation where it feels so hopeless and I feel helpless? But it's like, what is that thing I can do?
So what are some of the action items that, the group says, okay, people who do want to do something, what are some of those action items, Kirsten?
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is, in the state of Illinois, there are so many Moms Demand Action local groups. So for those of you on the South Side, I am your leader. So reach out to me for more if you want to join our group. And a lot of what that entails is we go to community events and we have a table. And we just tell people, hey, this is what we're doing. If you want to be a part of our group, we're happy to get in touch with you, tell you when our meetings are. And then a lot of the meetings, we talk about legislation that's coming down that we need to support. We may do phone banks for in certain communities at certain times. We may do kind of door knocking to say like, hey, we want to give you information on our gun sense candidates. And the other thing I would say for people to do, if it's like, I don't know if I want to get involved in yet another group, is to vote. And I know that sounds like, oh, okay, yeah, get out there and vote, but it really makes a difference. And take a look at your candidates, see what they're all about. If they are a gun sense candidate, you will know that. And what that means is that they are proponents for laws against reckless use of guns. Gun storage laws are big, because one of the number one killers of children is guns. And it's not because someone necessarily actively targets them, but it's because they find one in the home.
Access. Yeah.
It's access. So, so a lot of what we do is actually try to push legislation and make sure we're electing gun safe and gun sense candidates.
Well, it's nice. And it sounds like there's different layers for people too. So like you said, you can be really involved, or,
Yep.
You find a middle place, or
yes,
just simple as here's the candidates and go vote, which is great.
Yes.
Moms Demand Action is where you need to go to check that out.
Yes. momsdemandaction.org.
All right. Well, before we get to our last section, really quick, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. So hang tight. All right. Well, we're back, and we're going to wrap up our chat with some baseball talk because, we're baseball girls. So for those of you that don't know, Kirsten is the Den mom of the 108. Her husband is Beef Loaf. She is often known as Mrs. Beef. I think that was the first time I knew. That's why I was like, I got to find out her name. I don't want to just call her Beef, I guess. So first, I just wanted to ask you, how did you become a White Sox fan? Was it tied in with all of this and your husband, or is it completely separate?
Yeah, so many people have these great stories of generational White Sox fandom of oh, my parents or my grandpa or all these people. I grew up in Iowa, and what a lot of people don't know about Iowa is that there is not one. Yeah, not one professional sports team in any sport. And in my household, we just weren't big. My parents weren't big baseball fans of any team. So it's not, even though the Cubs have their farm team there, I wasn't really a fan of any baseball. Moved to Chicago, marry a Chicago boy, and I'm immediately a White Sox fan. Even though at the time we were living 4 blocks from Wrigley, but yes. Yeah, so really my fandom started when I met my husband.
And so how long ago was that then?
Oh my gosh. So when I met, yeah, right. Okay, now we get into when we met, it was 25 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think, we've been married 23, so yeah, long time.
It goes by in a flash.
It does though, right? I can still remember our wedding day. So yeah.
Oh, I know. But sometimes, thank goodness we have a VHS. That's how long ago we got married.
Love it.
We still have one VHS player in the house, right?
Yeah.
So that we can remember all that stuff.
I love it.
So who is your favorite White Sox player of all time?
I know, again, so many people have these, really, from a really long time ago, but since my fandom is relatively new, Jose Abreu.
Yeah.
I mean, he just embodied to me, I teach a lot of team building and leadership, and a lot of those words are so buzzwordy, be a team player, go out there and do your best. And we don't really know what that looks like, but Jose Abreu embodies that for me. And, watching him and knowing what the White Sox meant to him, and that, it's kind of hey, I want to play here, when we see so many people just being can't wait to get traded, or I shouldn't say they say that, but it seems like their level of play at times, they want to get traded.
So were you sad when it kind of ended the way it ended with Jose? That was kind of heartbreaking.
It really was. And I think it's one of those things where I would like everyone I like to always stay and always do the things I want them to do. I know supposedly this organization is a business. So, I get it. I get it. You have to do what you have to do. But that one was hard. A lot of other people, I'm okay, I liked that person. That's a good player. Okay. Sad to see them go, but not really. But it hurt. It hurt when he departed.
Yeah. It seems kind of like with most of the franchise players, it doesn't end the prettiest sometimes. I mean,
I know.
thankfully, that ended well, but
Yeah.
Burley.
Like the only sunset feeling I had, like walked off in the sunset, got to retire on his own terms, was Paul Konerko.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
I held that over so many of my friends who are Cubs fans. Like, well, we didn't trade our captain to the Yankees. You guys did. And he refused a letter. So whatever.
Yeah.
About Anthony Rizzo. And it pained me a little bit because I liked him. But I was also like really bitter and really mad at my friends. So they kept glommering. I'm like, shut up. This happens all the time here.
Right. Yeah.
You don't get a jersey. You don't get attached. I just bought a black jersey for the White Sox for the first time ever, because I was like, the only other jersey I have is Paul Konerko, and if I get a T-shirt, they're gonna get traded.
Right? You feel like you're jinxing someone,
right? Like I feel like I have a Gordon Beckham T-shirt that I probably should symbolically burn at some point. I don't know.
Well, at least he's on the broadcast.
That's the logic I had about a bunch of Hawks players. I'm like, well, he's on the broadcast, so I guess it's not that bad. But,
yeah.
So how have you all in the community that you've built there at the rate, how have you gotten through the last couple of years?
A lot of alcohol. No. Yes. And, I think there's something, you said the word community, and that's what it is.
Yes.
I feel like when I go to a game, no matter what the product is on the field, no matter what the outcome is at the end, I'm still there with friends. And there's not a game, even if you go during the week, a day game, there's always someone there that you know. And if you don't know anybody, you can always meet someone new. I think it's great that the community is really in that section.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's how we've gotten through, is just to like, hey, we're in this together. We're here for however painful it is. For
better or for worse, right? We're here.
Seriously, yes.
And I think that is one of the really cool things about our fan base, is that sense of community that's been built, through the X app.
Yes, right.
It's like, I mean, that's how I met you. Just waltzed over to the section and said, hey, this is me from Twitter. And, it's just, it's so cool to be able to get to share that with other fans. And, thanks to you all for being a huge part of cultivating that. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. And I do notice other fan bases, and not all, but other fan bases can't always say that.
Right. Yeah.
Whether or not it's a team like the Cubs that's such a nationally loved team, or the Yankees, where it's our fans are all over the country. They don't necessarily have that in stadium
connection,
camaraderie. Yeah.
Well, so speaking of that, do you hear the end of the fact that your husband has a bobblehead?
I mean,
like walking around the house like, I got a bobblehead.
Oddly enough, he doesn't say that around the house. One, he knows our daughter will shut him down immediately.
Gotta love daughter dads.
But I will say it's very surreal, the amount of people from different parts of my life that have gotten in touch with me to say, like, wait, is this for real? And it's like, oh, I didn't know you even paid attention to any of that stuff. You don't even live anywhere near here. Yeah. You're not a White Sox fan, whatever it may be. It's really cool, and it's a lot of fun and very, very funny too.
And so when are the ladies gonna get their due? Because behind every good man is a,
and don't we know it? Don't we know it? I will say there is a part of me that, one, after a weekend at the ballpark, I'm done.
You're done.
Like, I don't want any more notoriety. And that's me as a side player way over here. And I'm an extrovert, but after a weekend, it's like, nope, I don't want to think about this. But I will say that the ladies' Sunday Soak episode is the most watched Sunday soak of all time. So I will say that even though we may not be the key players, we are players that people come show up to see, whether or not it's the Sunday soak or it's the Festivus show that they do.
Or the tournament. I mean, so many ladies plow their way right through the tournament, which is awesome.
Which is so great. I mean, Beefloaf really makes sure that there's a large contingency of women. He just wants it to be more equitable. He knows that even though you can take a fan base and it may be only 20% to 80%, but he's like, I don't want my tournament to be that way, even though that would be representative. He's more like, I want to bring the ladies closer, the percentages closer to 50-50, even though it's not, but it's definitely more than what a traditional fan base would be, which I love.
Yeah. And I think, I feel like, I mean, I have no hard stats, but I really feel like there are a lot of women engaged in White Sox fandom.
Yes.
On our staff at Southside Sox and Sox Pop, I mean, Brett has done an awesome job too. Like, we have more ladies than we do guys, So, yeah.
And I think that's like a conscious curation, which I love.
Absolutely.
Because it's showing women can like sports too.
Yep.
And we do. And we're engaged. And we're smart about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it. We can write about it. We can podcast about it. We can do all the abouts it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a perfect time to wrap it up. We're amazing and we know it. So yeah. Yes. So thank you so much, Kirsten, for joining us. This has been a joy, and my family will be at the ballpark in July, and we have seats to come sit in the section. Super excited about that. So
great.
Just
cannot wait. And thank you both for having me on. It's such a pleasure getting to talk with both of you.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Ladies Night. And thanks everyone for joining us. And we'll be back next week.